Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Faith Chats. I'm your host, Andrew Burnett, and today I have with me my special guest, Geron Davis. Geron, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It's a joy to be with you, brother.
So, can you take us back to the beginning? How did your journey in music and ministry start for you, and what sparked your passion for worship leading and songwriting?
Well, I happen to have the honor and joy and craziness of being born into a pastor's family. I am the oldest of four kids, and so my mom and dad pastored for 57 years. And dad played guitar and sang, mom played piano and sang. My first memories of singing are when I was 5 years old, standing on a folding chair behind a pulpit. That's back when they had the old silver mic mounted onto the pulpits, and the gooseneck that would ring every time you moved. um, but I would stand in the center. My dad would play guitar. Mom would stand on one side, dad on the other, and we would sing. My dad would preach. He would preach revivals, and then they started pastor. They were pastoring when I was born, and they went through a season after they left that church where they evangelized for several years, and we would my dad would preach revivals all over the country, and we would go. That was back when they would do revivals for a week, and they didn't take a rest night back then. They did Monday, 7 nights a week, and I would sing with mom and dad, and I just don't remember when I wasn't singing in church. And when we weren't involved in church, I read something the other day that I thought was pretty appropriate and very applicable to me and my brother and two sisters. And that is that we grew up with a drug problem. We were drugged to church on Sunday and drugged back on Sunday night and drugged there on Wednesday night and then drugged there for rehearsals and rallies and revivals. And so, that's the only life we ever knew. And so, I just think it was, I honestly have to say it wasn't something I picked. It picked me. It was in my DNA. I always say this is not a career, it's a calling. And I don't remember when I didn't think in my mind that this is what I was supposed to do.
So your family has a very rich musical heritage with the Davis family's gospel music background. How did growing up in that environment shape your approach to worship and songwriting?
Well, we were because my dad was a pastor, and my dad, he's God rest his soul, he's gone to glory. My mom's still living and thinks she's 45. She's not. We have to keep reminding her. But dad was one of those pastors. He loved to read. He loved Louis Lamar, westerns. He loved any kind of reading, and his messages, I tell everybody, my dad was to the pulpit what Louis Lamar was to the Western printed page. My dad preached in such um, beautiful, expressive ways. And so, but we were very word oriented. My dad, me and all my siblings, we can, as one preacher said, we can quote the Bible from the table of contents to the maps. We just grew up knowing the word, and dad was such a wordsmith, and he made the word come alive. And so I think that's where my songwriting gift came from, was hearing my dad explain Bible stories and preach the word in such an expressive, exciting, artistic way that made you want to listen and made it come alive. And to this day, I can read scriptures that I've heard since I was a kid and still find something new and fresh every time. And that's why I encourage people, read your Bible. Don't let it be something that is like a piece of furniture that just collects dust in your house. Make sure that you get into the word and look at it and read it, and in a sense eat it, because it is the living bread, and it will feed your spirit, man. And so, we grew up singing. My mom and dad, we loved music. And I remember as a kid going to hear the Happy Goodmans and going to hear the Rambos and going to hear, the Oak Ridge Boys, and going to hear all the different groups that would sing. And then when I was in high school, um, man, I was like in the ninth grade, I think. Me and a bunch of my friends, my dad pastored in West Tennessee, and that's where I went to high school in Savannah, Tennessee. And we went to Memphis to hear this artist named Andre Crouch.
Wow.
And brother, my musical world exploded in Technicolor. And it was right at the beginning of the CCM, contemporary Christian music era. And then artists like, I remember a guy who was a preacher but also an author, by that had written the book The Cross and the Switchblade, came to our high school to do a rally, and he brought this new group Dallas Home. Dallas had just written this song called Rise Again. And they started that piano thing, and man, again, more music and more time. And then of course Reba, my sweet friend Reba Rambo, she um started a solo career that was, more contemporary in flavor. But of course she had that gift, like her mama, for writing great lyrics. And then, there was the Gaither Trio, but I really got into the Gaithers music when the Gaither vocal band was started. And it was like, yes, this is good. And, and then of course the Imperials, and then the group Truth was just such a powerhouse back then. They were taking kids from churches all over the country and putting them together, the best singers and musicians, and they would go to churches, and man, they were phenomenal. And, I was 19 years old when my dad, at 16, I started writing songs. 15, 16. Some of them are not so great, but I was listening to all these great songs and these great songwriters like Gloria Gaither and Dottie Rambo and Dallas Home and Lanny Wolf. And I would hear all these great songs, and Rusty Goodman. And I was wanting to write me some songs. So we didn't have any girls in our church. Andrew, it was a desert. All we had were guys. We had one girl, and she's married to my brother this very day because she was his age. Brother and all the guys in our youth group, I taught them how to sing or play and sing harmonies. And we had a drummer and bass player, and I played keys. And we started a group, and we bought a sound system. My dad got us a van and a trailer, and we went to the Oak Ridge Boys studio in Nashville and made a record. And Andrew, it scares me to think about it now, but I did that record in one day. We did the tracks, the vocals, and mixed it all in one day. We started at 10 one morning and left at 2 the next morning. That scares me to death now. I would never consider doing a record like that now. But we just didn't know what we were doing. We were making it up as we went. And so, we made our record every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. If you were having a hog calling contest and wanted a gospel group, we were your group. We would be there. And what would happen is, because we had so many young guys in our group, we would go and girls would come, and we had a pretty decent sound. Somebody sent me a copy of our album the other day that we made. We were called the Believers because Dallas Home had sung the song Hey, I'm a Believer, and so that was one of our songs that we did. But several of the songs we recorded were songs I wrote. And so I had started writing songs, and we would sing and girls would come because we had all these guys in a group. And so, we're meeting girls, and we're serving the Lord, that's win-win, brother. That's just you can't beat that, right? That's a thank you, Lord. So, but something was born and cultivated in us. We would rehearse almost every night we were up at the church. And I look back now and realize that, were we perfect? Absolutely not. Did we probably do some things that we wouldn't want our parents to know about? Probably. But 99% of the time, we were at the church rehearsing gospel music. There's no telling what God used in those moments to keep us out of a lot of stuff. I have several friends in high school who were killed in car wrecks, and this happened and got messed up on alcohol and all that kind of stuff. And I don't say that in a judgmental way. I'm just saying I thank the Lord for how He used these gifts to protect us from things that could have happened. And so when I was 19, we built a brand new church in that little town. And Dad asked me about 6 weeks out if I would write a song for the first Sunday service. And I said, sure. And then I just forgot about it because I was 19 and had important stuff going on in my life, right? And so a couple of weeks later, he comes back and says, how about it, Jaron? You got us a song? I go, Dad, there's some things that as a pastor only you can do. And I couldn't do them if I wanted to. But I can take this off of your plate of things to worry about. Don't you worry. I know when that Sunday is, you'll have your song. Consider it done. Saturday night, the night before the first Sunday service, we had worked all day getting everything ready for the church for the first Sunday in the new building. Everybody had gone home except me and Mom and Dad. Dad was walking down the hall toward his new office, and I was walking down the hall facing him, and he smiled on his face. He says, son, I can't wait to hear your song tomorrow. And fear gripped my heart. And I decided in all my 19-year-old wisdom, I probably better not put it off any longer. So I peeled off into the sanctuary and sat down at the new grand piano they had purchased for the church and thought, what do we want to say when we come in here tomorrow? And Andrew, in about 25 minutes, God poured all the words and all the music into my procrastinating teenage heart till we are standing on holy ground. And people said, did you feel something when you wrote it? And I go, no, I was tired. I was 19. I'd worked all day. It was midnight. I was ready to go get into bed. I went home, went to bed, got up the next morning, woke up my 17-year-old brother and my 11-year-old sister, taught them the words and the parts to the chorus. And we sang it for the first time over 40 years ago, never imagining what God was going to do. And with that song. And I love to tell young people today, number one, God can do more in your last minute than you can do in 6 months before. Number two, even when he has every reason not to use you, you procrastinated. I don't know why God would pick me. If I'd have been God, I'd have picked Bill Gaither. He was old 40 years ago, but but he had a track record, But God doesn't look for ability nearly as much as he looks for availability. And I've watched you, and you've had 1,000 reasons why you could say, I can't do this. You've had physical issues, you've struggled with different things, and yet your approach has always been what you text me this morning. Let's give the devil two black eyes. And you have made yourself, there may be people on the planet that have more ability than Andrew, but there's no one that had more availability than Andrew. And you are living proof, you're a living testimony, as am I, that I might have. There are people who could write a song better than me. There are people who could play better than me. There are people who could do a whole lot of things better than me, especially back at that point in my life. But God said, I want to use you. And a songwriter said it a long time before I was born, little is much when God is in it. And if you make yourself available to him, just like he took the loaves and the fishes and he broke it and he blessed it and he multiplied it, and the hunger of men and women and children were fed that day. He takes the offerings that we give, even though to us they may seem humble, they may seem not enough. He says, if you'll give it to me, if you'll surrender it to me, I'll bless it and I'll break it. And by using your gifts in the hands of God, people are blessed and people are fed.
So, what's your songwriting process like? Do you wait for inspiration or do you have a discipline to sit down and write regularly?
You know what, Andrew? The answer is yes. I, 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 I try to, I try to write on a regular basis. I've got a writing session this afternoon. Um, but to be honest with you, I probably don't write as regularly as I should. Now that's just being totally transparent. Um, because I wear a lot of hats. You know, I've been married. Becky and I just celebrated 43 years of being married. So she has things she want me to do. I need to, you know, will you please vacuum the floors? Will you please go pick up this? Will you? And so, that's part of my duties and obligation as a husband. She would probably tell you, not only do I not write enough, I don't do things for her enough, but but we're not going to let her in on this conversation right now. Um, I have two kids. I have a daughter and a son. They are both married. I have four grands now, brother.
Wow.
That's the life. I've got my daughter's married to Tyler Vestal, who plays piano for Ernie Haas. They have three kids, and then my son is Neiman, who is married to Rachel. Neiman was the drummer for Jason Crabb for 5 years. Then he was drummer for the worship leader Jordan Feliz. He was his MD for 3.5 years, and now he plays drums for Natalie Grant. He's played with Tarn Wells and Toby Mackey, toured with them. He's played with a lot of different artists, but his primary calling now is he is the young adult pastor at the Belonging Co., which is a large church here in Nashville. And he's got about 1,200 18 to 30-year-olds that he pastors and leads. And, my grandkids and my kids and going to see them when they're doing things. And then my wife and I and my sister, the little 11-year-old who sang Holy Ground for the first time, she and her husband, Shelton and Allison Lovern, the four of us travel and sing. And so we are out most weekends or a lot of weekends. And then I also produce and arrange and write. So just released a new Christmas project. So we've got stuff going on all the time. It's easy sometimes to get caught up in life and not write as much as I should, but I do try to write something on a regular basis, at least every week.
So, how does it feel to know that songs you've written, like Holy Ground or In the Presence of Jehovah, are sung by congregations across the globe even decades later?
It is the most stunning, humbling feeling in the world. I just can't believe that, you know, over 4 decades after we wrote those songs, they're still being sung. People still request them, and we still get to keep doing this. I just, it's really hard to believe. So many people have a window of time, a season, and then there are songs that God decides to use that kind of defy the seasons and, and just keep I have people. I don't know if you can still hear me. It looks like it's spinning. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Um, my screen started spinning, and I was afraid we had lost each other. Um, My son tells me when he's getting ready to preach. Now he plays a lot of contemporary worship music, and he's great at it. But he tells me when he's getting ready to preach, the song he plays every time is "In the Presence of Jehovah." And another song that I wrote several years ago called "It Took a Lamb." He plays those songs, which are, decades old, but they take him to the presence of God. Some people would say that's what he associates with his childhood. I don't know. I have a lot of people tell me that when they want to go in, meaning go into the presence of God, that in the presence of Jehovah just takes them there, and holy ground takes them there. I don't know how God does that, why He does that. His ways and thoughts are so much higher than ours. But I know this: it's a very rewarding feeling to realize that something that a vessel is imperfect, um, as me, had the privilege and the honor of creating something that will live longer than me and bless people around the globe, people I'll never meet. We sang in Japan several years ago, and we sang "Holy Ground" to 5,000 people, and we learned "Holy Ground" in Japanese, the chorus. Now I'm not sure what they thought four people with southern accents were saying in Japanese. Hopefully they appreciated the effort, but they stood to their feet, and 5,000 people in Japan, the other side of the world, sang "Holy Ground" in English to us. And
Wow.
I realized then, wow, we just were in Africa this past October, and we sang to hundreds of pastors and worship pastors, and we started singing "Holy Ground," and they all stood and started singing it. And I just, Africa, Asia, we sang it in Europe, in Norway, we've sung it in England. Um, and probably every state in the US, and people always stand and sing it, and it just boggles my mind that something that a 19-year-old kid wrote in a little one-horse town, God has used it to touch people that I'll never even meet, but that God has woven those songs into the fabric of their lives, the stories we get. When mother was dying, we held hands and sang it. When our little boy was killed, we all gathered around and sang "Holy Ground." And I realized that something God let me create is not just something that's sung in churches, but it's in the lives of believers, in their everyday lives all around the world. And that is the most reward. That's better than any double award I could ever win.
So, was there a defining moment in your life when you knew God was calling you to use music as a tool for your ministry?
Yes. In high school, I thought I was going to be a doctor. I worked in this dental lab, and I thought I would either be a oral surgeon, an orthodontist, or I would be a medical doctor. I just love people, and medicine always intrigued me. Um, I'm sorry, they're using the blower out on the patio out back. I'm so sorry. This happens to be yard day. I forgot about it. Um, but then it just hit me that this was what I was supposed to do. My dad, who is a godly man and believed in the callings of God, he encouraged me to go to college, get a degree, get a trade. I said, "Dad, I want to do this." And he said, "No, son, go to college, get a trade, and then if the music thing don't work out, you've always got something to fall back on." And I tried to listen to him and thought about it, but I just kept being pulled, and so I went back to Dad and I said, "Dad, this is what I want to do." He said, "What if the music thing don't work out?" I said, "Dad, at that point it won't matter. This is all I want to do. So I went to college in Jackson, Mississippi, where Lanny Wolf was the dean of music, and his music was really popular back then. And so I wanted to go study under him, and his songwriting was great, and his music style back then was really fresh and new. And I went, and a pastor's daughter from Coshada, Louisiana, um, came that year. She had gone to LSU. She had done what her daddy said. She went to LSU and got a master's degree in business and education. She was smart, but she also did the music in her dad's church, and she loved Lanny's music and wanted to go study under him. And we just happened to go the same year, and they put me on the list to play for chapel the day they put her on the list to sing. And that's the way we met. And that following summer, we got engaged, and the rest is history.
So you and your wife Becky have ministered together for years. How has your partnership influenced your approach to worship, leading, and songwriting?
You know what? It has been first of all, we both grew up musical, so we are constantly listening to other styles. We listen to, like I said, the Goodmans and the Rambos and the Gaithers and all of those people, but we also listen to um, the contemporary. And then, I gotta be honest, yeah, we grew up in the 70s, brother. That's when music was music. um, we grew like the Eagles and, you know,
Jaren, you're freezing up on me.
and so it's been good for us to have each other. The presence of Jehovah. She's an incredible writer. So not only do we write together, we sing these songs together, and we get to see the reaction of the people and see these songs used in ministry, from creation all the way to the performance of them and the recording of them. So that's a real blessing to be able to do this together, every single part of it.
So, as a worship leader, how do you create an atmosphere where people can connect with God, especially in diverse situations like churches or conferences?
Well, it's one of the things that I like to say. I teach this at conferences, and I teach it to young writers and young worship leaders, is don't get up and talk to the people about God until you've first gotten down and talked to God about the people. I think you have to not only cultivate the gift in you and try to hone your writing skills and your musician skills, but you also have to spend time in prayer and Bible reading to keep your life um, submitted to the Lord and as a living sacrifice, where He has to be. I heard a friend of mine say, God has this idea that worship is all about Him. And so we have to make Him first in our life, not our writing career, not our playing skills, not our harmonies and performing abilities, but He has to be the top priority. And He said, if you'll seek first the kingdom of God, all these other things will be added, your gifts and stuff, but he has to be top priority. And I think that's what's allowed the Lord to use us so long, is we have tried to keep our finger on the pulse of the church and don't write songs. Bill Gaither says, don't write songs that answer questions nobody's asking. Keeping our finger on the pulse of the church and the needs of the people, and what people are going through, what the country's going through, what the world's going through, and try to address those things in a way that leads them into the presence of God. Songs do a couple of things sort of in general. Either they give God words to say to people, or they give people words to say to God. A lot of people want to worship the Lord. They don't know how, but we'll give them a lyric. We are standing on holy ground. I know that there are angels all around. Well, that gives them words to say about the worship experience, and that leads them in. So I think it's a best word for us is sure that the top priority is leading people into his presence.
Can you share a memorable moment from leading worship, maybe a time when you felt God powerfully move through the music?
Oh man, so many times. We've seen things happen. And there are hundreds, because our goal every time we get up is to make sure he gets in the house. He said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw. And when he draws, when he shows up, we all look good. But one of my favorite memories is a conference we did in Norway. And it was a conference of high school and college age kids. And we had this 3-day rehearsals, workshops, all this kind of stuff. The band was from Norway and they were phenomenal. This choir, they had 600 in the choir, this youth choir, and they all look like Abercrombie and Fitch models, but they sang like black folk, and they loved black gospel music. And black gospel music in Norway is a popular style, even for non-believers. And so, we would sing, we would rehearse during the day, and we'd take breaks, and they'd go outside and have a beer or smoke a cigarette, and then come back in, and half the choir wasn't even, believers. They just liked the style of music. And at the end of the 3 days, it was a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then on Sunday night, we did a concert, and all of their families and all of the community came for this concert. About 1,500 people came. So on Sunday morning at a church right near this campus we were having this conference at, was they were going to have a worship service, and it was non-required. It was optional. You could come if you wanted to. And we had spent the last 2 days with these kids and having a good time and laughing and just singing and going over all this music. And on this service, about 95%, it looked like maybe all of them came to the service. The place was packed. And we sang, and the presence of the Lord came into the place. And at the end, we invited people that wanted to give their life to Jesus. If you don't know the Lord and would like to give your life to the Lord and have him working in you, and to know that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life, we just want to give you an opportunity to come to the altar today. And I mean, dozens of them got up and came to the altar. That night, we did the same thing at the end of the worship conference, and dozens of their parents and families and people from the community came to the altar. That was one of the times when I realized that it wasn't, these are people who speak English, but they also speak another language. And we're coming in and don't know their language, but they sensed the anointing and they sensed the presence of God. And he said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw. They were drawn to the altar and gave their lives to the Lord. That's probably one of the times that the Lord showed up in such a powerful, undeniable way. And I understood the power of music when coupled with the gospel can literally have eternal impact on people's lives.
So is there any new songs or projects that you're currently working on that you can share with our listeners? What's exciting you creatively right now?
Well, I just released, I have written over 10 Christmas collections through the years. Um, and 20 years ago, we did one called Sing Joy. That was the number one selling Christmas collection for, 1 or 2, maybe 3 years. And so we decided to do another one on the 20th anniversary called Sing Joyful. And it just came out. It's being distributed by Day Win Worship. And Bradley Knight, a young kid that I met when he was 12, and now Bradley's probably one of the premier arrangers in Christian music, and he just finished doing a big Disney project. So God's using him in a great way. He's produced the last 2 or 3 Collingsworth family records, and we've worked together many years. He orchestrated and arranged this. It's so amazing. That's fun. And then Kindred Souls, my sister and brother-in-law and my wife and I are working. We've done 7 songs on a new project that's going to come out here in the fall. And we just finished writing a song. Me and Dave Clark and Shane Dunlap wrote a song that is probably one of my favorites in a long time, and it's called "Boundless Love of Christ." And there's a line in it that says, "Oh, how deep and how wide is the boundless love of Christ! Over and over again, He keeps blessing my life." Here's my favorite line: "Just when I think I've learned all His ways, He gives one more reason for me to give praise." And that's the beauty of knowing Jesus and getting into his word is on a daily basis. He keeps finding new ways to bless us and to grow us and to strengthen us. And the Bible says the mercies of the Lord are new every morning. And so he's got something new for you on a daily basis, the daily bread. And that's what we're trying to communicate. We're just writing songs and recording projects, and it's fun. It's a fun way to serve Jesus.
So the worship music landscape has changed a lot over the years. How do you see the role of worship music evolving in today's church, especially with the younger generation?
It's interesting because my son is very involved, with Jordan Feliz and Natalie Grant and a lot of different people, and that he is heavily involved in more of the current modern worship stuff. Um, and my son-in-law plays for Ernie Haas, which is the Southern Gospel side. So we see all of it. And I see, honestly, Andrew, it feels like the pendulum was way over here and then it swung way over there, and now it's coming back to center because more and more churches are starting worship choirs and having the choir loft on the platform again. More and more people are starting to sing hymns, and the hymns, even if they play it, with an electric guitar, the words of Fanny Crosby are amazing. And I see a hunger in young people and a passion to see the presence of God fill the building and fill their lives. And that is the beautiful part of music. I don't care, if they have two sets of drums on stage and a percussionist and four electric guitars, or if they have a mandolin, a fiddle, and a banjo. It doesn't matter to me as long as the motive, the heart of the musician and the heart of the singer is hungry for the presence of God and leading people to the presence of God. And that's what God's looking for. That's what the Father seeks is those who will worship him in spirit and in truth, and who hungers and thirsts after righteousness. And when you do that, according to his word, he says, if you hunger and thirst after righteousness, you will be filled. And I believe God is ministering and moving throughout the earth in all styles of music, because the hearts of musicians and worship leaders are turning to the Lord in such a powerful way, because we realize in the day we live in, there's so much going on in the world. We don't have the answers. We can't give them the answer for all the junk you see on the news and things that are going on in politics and everything. It's just chaos. But he said that if we would lift him up, he would draw. And if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, then I will heal their land. And I think that's what's happening literally all over the world. And that's encouraging to me, that young people and middle-aged people and old people are having a renewed hunger for the presence of God. And I think we're seeing you know, actually what the Bible talks about is, in the last days, I'll pour my spirit out on all flesh. I think we're seeing a revival of a hunger for the presence of God, and it excites me.
So, Jaron, our last question before we let you go: what one message you hope people take away from your music and ministry when they sing your songs or worship with you?
Andrew, I hope two things. I interviewed an older pastor who had been serving the Lord and written books and very successful. Um, I wanted to write a song about his ministry, and I sat down to interview him, and I said, "What do you want people to remember when they remember you and what you did?" He said his sentence really was profound and simple. He said, "I hope they saw Jesus." So that that is what I hope they saw. Not impressed by ability, but sensed the presence of God whenever they saw us. And then I hope that we impart the message that will make them understand that in their life, they have a decision to make every single day. And that's this: I either decide that my circumstance is going to change my worship, or I believe that my worship is going to change my circumstance. And it doesn't matter what I believe or what kind of believer I am or how many promises of God I know. If I don't communicate those to people and let them take home something that changes their life, then I'm just sounding brass and tinkling cymbal. But if I can get people everywhere to understand the power of their personal worship, not singing ability, but worship, that in their daily life, no matter what their circumstance says, it's not going to change my worship, but my worship, if I just keep on doing it, is going to change my circumstance, and he will complete the work he started, and all things do work together for good. That is the goal that I hope everybody who hears our songs or hears us sing, that's what I hope they all see, is that Andre Crouch said, Jesus is the answer for the world today. Above him, there's no other. Jesus is the way. And through it all, we've learned to trust in Jesus and trust in God. That's the goal of our life and our ministry and our songs and our singing, is just to point people to Jesus and help them live better lives because of the promises in his word.
Well, Jaron, thank you so much for your time, my friend. God bless you, and I look forward to the next time we can chat again.
You too, Andrew. I love you, brother. Thank you again.
Love you too. Bye bye.
See you, man.